what we've been hearing over the last several days and certainly over the last 24 hours from the Secretary General of NATO is that this conference is all going to be about strength and unity and projecting that across borders. Now, what we understand, of course, is several agreements are going to be signed to later today, and one of those, of course, is beefing up the security from Poland through the Baltic states, through Eastern Europe. That's adding 4,000 troops, 4 battalions led by the U.S., Germany, Canada, and the U.K. And essentially what they want to do is basically tell these Eastern European states that they're not going to be left behind, that they are, of course, going to be taken care of by their NATO allies, by their NATO brethren. But the bigger question, of course, is going to be what this Brexit really does mean for NATO going forward, because at the end of the day, if you have Europe in crisis, then NATO takes on a much stronger role, because this is, of course, the serious link between North America, certainly the United States, and Europe. So NATO set to take on a stronger role here, but we understand, of course, that there are even divisions within how the EU is relating to NATO. Basically, this agreement that's going to put more troops on Eastern European border with Russia actually is causing some kind of a power struggle back in Brussels. It's just about who is going to be leading this in terms of the EU side. So a lot of questions going forward about how NATO is going to actually be able to come together here today and actually tackle these crises as they come. And of course, all of this relating back to what's happening in Russia with Mr. Putin. Shri?
Absolutely, and NATO increasingly looking east, isn't it? And with European leaders in disarray, what sort of sense are you getting about Russian foreign policy? Are they taking advantage of this vacuum? Is it emboldening them in certain respects?
What's interesting over the last several days, we've heard a much more conciliatory tone coming out of Moscow, certainly with Sergei Lavrov speaking to John Kerry over the weekend. They were talking about increasing cooperation in Syria, for example, so a much more conciliatory tone leading into this NATO summit. Of course, this is the largest NATO summit in history. We've got 28 member states, 26 other nations, and they were basically sat in a stadium that could say 58,000 people. So it's really interesting if you look at the breakdown of the numbers, just how many folks are showing up here. We have representation from the United Nations and also, of course, from the World Bank. So a lot of people coming to the table trying to figure out just what to do about this relationship. But when you look at it from the Russian side, of course, I mean, many of the people that we spoke to over the last couple of weeks, when you're talking about Brexit, say who benefits from Brexit, and of course, the first name to come up is Vladimir Putin. This is the person that benefits the most. And the question going forward is, will a Europe that's divided really be able to stand up to him, not just in terms of enforcing European sanctions against Russia, but also, of course, in terms of enforcing security in the borders?
Hadley, I want you to put your Middle East affairs hat on for a minute and give me your take about what we've seen in the past week, the upsurge in violence in Baghdad, 3 attacks in Saudi Arabia. We've seen attacks in Dhaka in Bangladesh and in Indonesia. What does that all tell you about ISIS's modus operandi?
Well, one U.S. official basically telling me that these Saudi attacks were essentially treachery. It's something that they really weren't expecting to see. I mean, over the last several years, certainly since 9/11, Saudi security, for example, has really been beefed up. The current crown prince and former interior minister was really at the helm of that. He's very much trusted by U.S. Western officials in terms of taking care of the security on the ground in Saudi Arabia, so that I believe that was quite a surprise to them. And then at the same time, it's coming around the celebrations around Eid. So a lot of people in the country, not many people absent. So a great deal of instability there at home. And then, of course, what's happening in Iraq really plays into the broader question about the political stability of that country and whether Prime Minister Abadi really has control.